Dharma is your duty to your own soul. Dollars make bigger dharmas doable. Make the most of your spins around on planet Earth. Welcome to the Dharma and Dollar Show with your hostess with the mostest, Kate Stillman. If you're repulsed by money, success, P&L statements, productivity hacks, don't listen. Stick to the Yoga Healer Body Thrive episodes released every Monday. But if you yearn for money talk, investments for your activism, real numbers in real time, if you want to get greedy for the good of all, stick around. And ask yourself before we begin, what do you want to make happen next?
Hello, it's Kate Stillman, and welcome back to the Yoga Healer Real Life Show. On today's show is Michael Kohan and the 6 human needs and your modern life skills. And I got to say, I really dive into my you're going to get to know more about me than you've ever wanted to. Sorry about that. You're going to get to know the human needs and what yours are. So significance, contribution, growth, love, certainty, uncertainty. I'm going to talk a lot about uncertainty and why it's so attractive to me. But you might find that yours is certainty, and there's a lot of ahas on that. Also, on today's show, I have a question that came in through Facebook about being stiff and still wanting to teach yoga. And as an incredibly stiff yoga teacher, I can relate. I'll do that at the Q&A at the end of my session with Michael and getting to know your psychological needs and how they can be met with positive outcomes. Stay tuned. Okay, hello everyone. I'm here with Mukunda Kohan. And how do you say it? Kohan? I'm not.
American name is Michael Kohan. Initiated name is Mukunda Chandradas. It's not my yogi name. It's my initiated name in the Bhakti yoga tradition. So I didn't make it up.
So what do you go by when people say, hey, what's your name?
It depends on the relationship. You know, like yoga, the name that you give in yoga determines the relationship. You know, your audience is very knowledgeable. So, you know, Warrior 2 is a fitness pose. But Virabhadrasana 2 is a spiritual pose within yoga.
Right.
So that's the name that you use. So if somebody wants like a material relationship with me, they go by Michael. They want a spiritual relationship with me, they go by my initiated name. And if they're like my family, they go by my family name. Like my mom calls me Mouse.
Oh, I want to call you Mouse. I guess that means I want to be family instead of any. But no, that's actually an interesting place to start the conversation because there's so many in the West. A lot of us see people take these spiritual names and we're like, oh, like who's that person now, or who are they pretending to be? But in the East, it's like you just get different names at different stages of your development that honor a transition that you've gone through. And it's not that you're not that old person anymore. It's just you're that, and you're this other. You know, you've taken on a new level of being you, and you have a new name that represents that. I know it's really throwing off a lot of people just being in yoga teaching communities where some people all of a sudden are like, no, now I'm this, I'm not that. And it's like,
Shakti, Shiva, Rasa, Leela. And they don't even know what it means. It's just like something they picked out of a hat.
Or or they do. I mean, some of them really do too, but it like kind of can throw the rest of everyone off of like, how do we do this? No.
So there's 4 ashrams in traditional yoga tradition. There's the Brahmacharya ashram, Grihastha ashram, Vanaprastha ashram, and Sannyasa ashram. Now you can start in Brahmacharya ashram and go through all 4 stages, or you can go from Brahmacharya right to Sannyasa, or a combination of different ashrams. These ashrams is where different names sometimes be formed. And the first ashram is the Brahmacharya ashram. And this is the ashram in traditional yoga families that's from childhood to about 21, 22, and you are a student. You're traditionally celibate student. You live in a spiritual yoga community. You study math, science, history, but you also study yoga, spirituality, scriptures. You study theology, and you live a certain period of time in this ashram life, and it's monastic. And after a certain point in life, you move on to the next stage of life called the Grihastha ashram. And the Grihastha ashram is the family life where you get married, you have a kid, you go off into the world, and you get a job. Then you move on to the next ashram stage, which is the Vanaprastha ashram stage, and it's more like you're retired. You step away from material life. You kind of start getting back into the spiritual community, and your kids are established. They're graduated from college, and you're kind of slowing down, moving into a smaller house. And then at your later point in life, you take what's called sannyasa, and you become basically like a monk again to prepare to the next stage of existence when you leave this body. So those 4 stages of life coincide with the name.
Right.
And
yeah.
So when you're in your initial family stage as a little kid, you get your family name. And that's like it's not your good name. It's like the only
like
the intimate, like Mouse. Yeah. That was my family name growing up, Mouse. Then after a certain stage of life, you get your good name. Mine is Michael. Then after a certain period of time of studying scriptures and following regulative principles based on the tradition that you're from in the East, you take what's called formal initiation in front of a congregation of like-minded devotees, and you make certain vows to live a certain way, and then you get your spiritual name, and then that's the name that you live within the spiritual community.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, sometimes we have these weird names like Mukunda Chandra Das, or my teacher Raghunath Das, or my mentor Yogeshwar Das. We have both a good name that we use for business, and we have a spiritual name to use in the spiritual community.
Well, and I mean, what's cool about it is like the name calls us up, right? It's like if you get a spiritual, or if you take on a spiritual name, it calls you to a higher sense than your worldly name. Like it's a very different operating system for your self-identification.
It's the name that the guru gives you that embodies the best version of you that he sees you as.
Yeah, or she.
Or she. I agree. Or she. So it carries a heavy weight, but it also says, this is who this is how he or she sees me as the best version.
Yeah.
So my name translates as the servant of the servant, who helps liberate souls and shines like the moon.
Beautiful. So how does that tie into the 6 human needs psychology? Because I'm sure there's a need in there that's being met when we are able to recognize in ourselves something that others see in us that call us to our potential.
I don't know. Well, let's explore it. It might or might not, but I never really thought about that.
Okay.
It's a good question, but I would say it has to go into growth for me and contribution. So we have basically 6 basic human needs in life. And this is under basic human needs psychology, and they're certainty, uncertainty, significance, love and connection, growth, and contribution. Out of those 6 human needs basically are the driving force for all our basic functions in life, of why we get up in the morning, how we behave, how we connect and interact with the world around us, and our lifestyle choices. 2 of those 6 human needs at certain points in life are the main things that drive us, that basically put everything else on the back burner. When you have 2 of the 6 human needs fulfilled in a positive way, they complement the other 4 human needs that you're not fulfilling primarily, because it's done in a positive way. But if you're fulfilling that human need in a negative way, it takes away from the other 4 human needs, and then your life becomes imbalanced. I'll give you an example of myself. My basic human need, one of my basic driving forces, is growth, and my second major human need is love.
Mm-hmm.
So I constantly need to be studying and taking on new projects, and I always need to kind of step into another role, another position. I'm never satisfied where I am in life.
Yeah.
But I also have this need to feel loved and connected. I'm constantly craving a connection to other people. I'm constantly wanting to be in different relationships, but my need is for growth and my need is for love. So they're conflicting in a sense. So I can have, if I'm not conscious of my need to feel growth in a positive way by studying and getting more certifications, and I don't fulfill it in a positive way, but I fill it through my need for love, then I'm constantly jumping from one relationship to another relationship to another relationship.
So it's certainty, uncertainty, growth, love. What were the other 2?
Certainty, uncertainty, significance, love, growth, contribution.
Oh, contribution.
Yes. and they both have a positive and negative fulfillment.
Right. And so if everyone listening can just like guess what theirs are: significance, contribution, growth, love, certainty, uncertainty. And we're looking for two, right?
Two are going to be your driving main force.
Two are the driving main force. And then are there going to be like two shadow ones that are just kind of like lurking in the background, totally unmet, or anything like that?
I have one of my students, her first two needs are growth and contribution, and then her third high need is significance.
Mm-hmm.
So she always has to feel important.
Yeah.
So so her need is to have significance in any sort of social situation. She always has to be the one in charge.
So if we're doing this in a negative way, where this is like basically how we drive everyone crazy.
Yes. Or drive ourselves crazy.
Well, of course that too, but like.
So like if your human need is uncertainty, okay, and you always need to have a feeling of uncertainty in life, how do you fulfill it positively?
Yeah.
Reading new books, traveling, going on vacation, trying different restaurants out. How do you fulfill it negatively? Cheating on your partner, doing drugs, drinking obscene amount of alcohol. So, basic human need is uncertainty. You can fulfill it positively or negatively.
Yeah.
And that's how you basically when you understand your human needs and you understand that you have main driving forces that control your actions, then you can begin to see how you fulfill them in a positive way instead of a negative way.
Right. And then they become the gift, right? Because not all of us have significance, right. But for those of us who do have it, it's like, guess what? You can have it really can contribute to contribution then, right? It might not come from contribution, but boy, you can use it in a way that is then contributing to the whole because you're willing to be significant.
Well, like, you have this wonderful podcast that I actually been listening to since I think you first inceptioned years ago. So it's really cool that I'm on the show now.
That is really cool.
It's really cool. And I like your podcast. And I don't know what your human needs are, but you can take a test that I have that my students do take when I work with them.
Yeah.
If your human need is significance, all right, and you as a person need to feel significant in life, that you need to have a leadership role. You choose to fulfill that in a positive way by creating this wonderful podcast that provides value to the community, that is part of a movement of conscious living. Or you can use it in a negative way by just stepping on other people's shoulders and doing whatever you can to get to the top, backstabbing people, comparing and contrasting, tearing people down that are more important than you, and just climbing up the ladder to have this powerful position, but it's full of chaos, distrust, and corruption.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's your choice as
You're
a
right.
human being. And when you understand it, then you can know how to live more harmoniously.
Yeah. Well, and it seems to me like when the way that how do I say this? It's like we had a dinner party the other night, and afterwards I reflected on my behavior, like a good yogi will, or yogini will, right? Because it's like you can't not reflect, right? It's part of your absorption process. Yeah, and I'm like, why did I say that? Like, why did I do that then? Like, why did I need to say that or feel that need, right? And that's what you're kind of pointing to is like, like seeing what's kind of going on behind and investigating and like saying like, well, where something felt in my reflective process of like, if I had a spiritual name, my spiritual name would have been like, you could have done that better. That, And I think it's really important that we get this, right? That we get because sometimes it's not just all positive or all negative. Like I think I found really good ways to, I definitely have growth as a need. And my other one is probably, uncertainty and significance are probably right there. And I think contribution is a side benefit that I end up doing a ton of contribution, but I'm not directly seeking it as much as, or I'm not directly driven by it. So how much of these are drives more than needs?
They're all drives. They're all needs. Depends on the person that determines what is a drive and what is a need.
Oh, so it's just linguistics at some point.
It's this linguistics. It's this personality types. I don't like it's. You don't want to put anything in a black and white category. It's like as Americans, as Westerners, we like to put everything in a box, right?
Yeah.
We like to say like, this is yoga, this is not yoga. This is kundalini, this is anusara, this is ashtanga, this is significance, this is growth, this is contribution.
Yeah.
It depends on, it's all bio-individuality. And sometimes people have a need to feel certainty, and sometimes people have a drive to feel certainty. So need to feel certain would be, you need to have a stable home, you need to have a roof over your shoulder head.
So it's like different levels. There's different levels between needs and drives. Like once your needs are mature, they become drivers, right?
Correct. Yes, that's a good way to look at it. Very intelligent way to look at it.
This seems to be significant in terms of like when I look at this list and I think of my husband and my daughter, they both have a much higher need for love than I do. Like I really don't have that high a need for love. I'm not sure why. but they do. And if I can know that about them, I can then be more loving to them. And then if they know I have a need for growth, they can be much more accepting of like, and for probably uncertainty, because I'm always like heading out, doing new things, right? I love the unknown. I never really know what's coming next to some degree. They can have a different level of understanding that like, hey, wait, were they're like love junkies, I'm kind of an uncertainty junkie.
Right. And they can understand what your needs are and basically accept you for who you are within those needs without having to change you. My girlfriend doesn't need love, but she needs certainty.
Oh, yeah. So you can, my daughter needs certainty. That's a trip.
Right.
That's a trip because then you have to like make things really stable.
I have to map out what we're doing with her like a week to 2 weeks in advance. We're planned because she needs to know exactly what's going on. And she doesn't need me to tell her I love her.
Yeah.
And I care for her. She needs me to show her through action, which gives her certainty that I care for her.
Right. Like you need to be there on time as planned. I mean, my daughter is the biggest planner I've ever met. I mean, she's 9 and she calls like recess meetings with her friends to plan the weekend. And that's in her whatever that's called. I can't think of the word.
Biggest need.
Yeah, her biggest need, or like the biggest thing, her like biggest beef, that was the word. Her biggest beef with my husband and I, because we both probably have a ton of uncertainty, desire, our need, is like, you guys are unreliable.
Yeah.
You know? And we're like, oh, we're just in this other flow, right? And for her, now that I get like, okay, if one of her fundamental needs is certainty and the other's love, like that's a lot of difference.
My girlfriend needs certainty. She needs me to write down, I am happy, I'm with you, you are a very beautiful person. She does not need me to look at her and give her flowers and be like, I love you. She needs it. She needs to feel certain about my feelings for her. And that gives her comfortability. And through that, she feels safe. And she feels like things are under control.
Yeah.
So it's when you understand what you need and the people in your life need, you're able to kind of live more productive and more harmoniously.
Yeah. So when certainty shifts from need to drive, then, and is it a drive for structure?
Let's say what's your certainty, since that one seems to be your daughter, or a lot of people in corporate America, a lot of people that have high power.
Oh, right. I need to keep the job. I can't leave the job because the insurance, and then how am I high health care, and how am I gonna? Yep.
Right. So your need is typically men having need, especially when they get married and they have a family. Their need shifts from like uncertainty, which because they want to go out and have a good time and they want to party and they want to travel, and then they don't want to admit it, but they're looking for love. When they get married, they no longer have that need for uncertainty, so they shift to a need for certainty because of the provider.
Right.
Men have to be the provider in life. We're the protector. We're the provider. So we have to get money. So then we put away the rest of our lives to create a sense of certainty for the family. So we sacrifice our health and our wealth.
Is that still true? I feel like my husband missed that phase, and my brother.
Yeah.
Really, it is. But that's like mainstream true. Well, you're in Jersey. I'm in the Rocky Mountain like ski bum country.
Oh yeah, no, East Coast. I work with men who are
you're in it
and stressed out and make more money than they possibly need in order to feel certainty, and because their need is to have money to provide for the family.
Well, and it's like a competitive certainty back east, and probably out on all the coast, right? Where it's
any major city. Any major
city.
There's my cousin lives in Denver, and her crazy workaholics.
Yeah.
He has to constantly provide for the family.
Yeah.
So when you understand certainty and it goes from a need to a drive, is when you overextend yourself and you forget about your other human needs. Like you just focus on money and you forget about love.
Yeah.
Or you focus on work and you forget about significance or growth. Like growth can be going to the gym or learning to dance or taking on a new project not related to your job to fulfill and grow as a person.
Yeah.
So you have to understand the balance, and that's where yoga and spirituality and mindful living kick in with understanding your 6 human needs.
Okay, and when we're back, you're going to find out a lot more about how to identify the needs, the 2 main psychological needs of the people you live with. I can't tell you since recording this with Michael how helpful this has been for me. Then after that, I'm going to dive into that Q&A. Hey, it's Kate, and when I think back to my healing and wellness journey and remember back to where I was at in my 20s and how so many conversations I wanted to have, I didn't really know who to have those conversations with that would actually open my mind and ignite my heart. And so at Yoga Healer, I have these conversations you can have with our coaches. If you go to yogahealer.com/have-a-conversation, you can have a free conversation with someone who gets it, with someone who gets the evolutionary wellness journey, the journey to thrive, and someone who understands some of the perspective shifts and mindset and understands what kind of resources we have at Yoga Healer to point you to help you to move forward, really, and make big changes in your life that you'll look back on and be like, wow, I'm so glad I talked to the right person at the right time. So if that sounds good, if that's like, yeah, I need to have a conversation, go to yogahealer.com/have-a-conversation. And there's more information on that page about how the conversation will go, et cetera, to help you feel more at ease about the whole experience. You don't need to have an agenda. We'll guide you through a process where you'll get insight into the direction that you want to go in. Having someone deeply listen on the other side of the line can make all the difference in the world, and also to guide you to next steps and resources. So take advantage. yogahealer.com/have-a-conversation. Yeah, well, because there's also because they're naturally opposing, right? There's dyads in them.
Not like certainty and love can be opposing, or they can be in conflict, or they cannot be in conflict.
But are there natural dyads of like certainty, uncertainty, significance and contribution, and love and growth? Because they're kind of like love is like cohesive to me. Growth is very it extends outwards, right? Significance is like all about me. Contribution's all about you, right? Like me for you. So there's these like dyads with.
There's totally dyads. So I can give you so here's a contradiction of certainty or certainty and significance. You're in inner conflict because significance can only be accomplished by comparing yourself to others, by being competitive, being out there in the world, and by taking risk. On the other hand, you don't want to be competitive, to take risk, or to be out there in the world. This is what I wrote. Because of your need for certainty, you have trouble involving yourself with people, yet you can only satisfy your need for significance by comparing yourself to others. So they're competing.
Yeah.
So they can work with each other and they cannot work with each other. And it depends on the person.
Yeah.
And it depends on how you find balance. So it's difficult if your need is certainty and significance, it's difficult to find true love and take care of others because you're focused on your inner feelings always.
Oh gosh, that would be a bummer.
Right. So when you understand it and you go, oh, my need is certainty and significance, I'm in inner conflict because of this or this, then you have to step back and figure out ways to find those fulfillments without going to that inner conflict.
Yeah.
So you don't compare yourself to others. You learn to not compare, contrast.
Right.
Like when I was brought up in a competitive environment. I grew up, like we were talking about before I was on the phone, in the Gold Coast of the Northeast in New Jersey. And, and I went to school and was raised to get a job in corporate America and climb the corporate ladder and be competitive. When I left corporate America to be a yoga teacher and a spiritual teacher, I still carried that need for significance from corporate into my spiritual life. And I ended up being competitive with my spiritual community. So,
wow. Yeah.
Other yoga teachers and other spiritual people. And I was like, oh, they're not spiritual enough. I'm more spiritual than them. I'm better than them. And I would tear them down. And I realized after a while, I was like, oh, I'm being competitive still instead of loving people. my need for significance is being fulfilled in a negative way, and I need to step back and fulfill it in a positive way by doing my best without comparing and contrasting.
Yeah.
And so when you understand it, is how you're able to then process it.
Yeah, and then it becomes a drive, right? And then you're like, oh, okay. Now, I mean, it's because if anyone has this strong driver need, yeah, everyone has it, right? Everyone has all of them. We just have dominant ones that. But you're saying that too. Is it dominant for a lifetime or just dominant per cycle of life?
Per stage of life. I wouldn't say stage or cycle. It's depending where you are and your goals at every given time. So it's cycle or stage.
Okay. And then are there underlying themes, though, within a life? It seems like there would be.
I'm thinking.
I mean, even if you think of like people who have done great things, you could probably come up with which one of the 6 was the center point of that.
Yeah. I mean, like, I generally see people that are very successful and have accomplished a lot of great things in life in terms of material accomplishments, captains of industry. Their basic human need is certainty, and their basic human need is significant, and that's why they get to where they're at in life.
Yeah,
but because that is their driving force, and they ignore all other human needs, the rest of their life is in shambles. Right. So it's to understand what your basic human needs are, what your driving human needs are, but then to not ignore the other human needs. To then say, how can I fulfill this human need in a positive way? Like being you. You run a very successful, very popular podcast. Your human need is significance, for sure. And I would guess contribution. So you could climb a corporate ladder and be a captain of an industry that is not ethical, or you can do what you're doing. And there's nothing wrong with being in corporate America. So it's about, like, there's a difference between like Tom's, the shoe company, and another company that makes shoes without being ethically sourced.
Yeah.
So it's understanding that in a positive way.
Yeah.
Like understanding that you want to have certainty and you want to have contribution, but how do I fulfill it in a way that makes the world better?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And how do I do it that I also can connect to the people in my life, my partners, my loved one, my family, so I don't have one area of my life fulfilled and ignore my other human needs.
Well, it seems like that just brings you into all the others, right? All of a sudden you're asking about contribution, you're asking about love, you're asking about uncertainty. So now you're just like, oh, okay, you're getting out of your own way. You're no longer blocking your own path, and you're able to become much more integrated as a human being.
Isn't that what the whole point of being a spiritually minded person is to become fully integrated and have work-life, spiritual life? Not to have your work life over here, your family life over here, and your spiritual life in this package over here, but to have all parts of your life together. That you wake up in the morning and you live a spiritually minded life. When you go off to your job, whether it's a yoga teacher or a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, you're still that spiritually minded person that you're at home, at work. And then when you go into your spiritual community, you're still that same person that you go through your whole life as a fully realized individual in all endeavors.
Yeah, I mean, and I would just say, for those who don't resonate with the word spiritual for whatever reason, it's like, it's just what being a human being is. It's
being a human being,
right?
Being a conscious person.
Yeah, or just being someone interested in, just like awake human being, someone interested in potential, and really using the technology that we have. I mean, the more that it's like I've been talking to a lot of people lately, and there's so much on the healing part of the journey, and then there's this place where you've gotten pretty integrated, and now it's the next part of the journey is about thrive. And in thrive, it's a really different ballgame, right? And so it's like just being a thriving human being, you've got to integrate. You've got to deal with your shadow issues. You've got to become more functional. That's why, like, post dinner party, I'm like, why did I do that weird little thing there? What was that about, right? And that's part of me becoming more integrated, so I can see, like, oh, there's probably a more functional way that I could use, that I could get this need for X met, right? And there's
we're pivoting to a different conversation, which is totally a good conversation to have. You know, I find that people on the path of self-awakening get addicted to advice. They get addicted to the question, and they constantly are like, I need advice, I need help, I need advice, I need help. And
it's
they
like codependent processing.
Codependent processing. They get addicted to counseling, and they don't take
and like fortune tellers, like modern day right? There's like the going to the oracle. Yeah.
I need to get my astrology chart done. I got to talk to a senior yogi about how to do work.
Yeah.
How to be mindful. And I'm always like, you're addicted to counseling and therapy. Integrate. You know enough now, and you've been studying like any sort of personal growth, self-improvement, business growth, or spirituality.
Yeah.
It's time to take the information that you have acquired and put it into action. Because if you don't put it into action, it's worthless. And
it's like shavasana for assimilation. It's like you've got to assimilate.
You got to assimilate. You have to take the knowledge and then bring it back out there in order to thrive as a human being.
Yeah.
That if you understand the Ayurvedic doshas, this is a Ayurvedic healing podcast, right?
In part, yes.
Yeah, and you don't take the teachings and apply them. Who cares if you know your dosha?
Yeah.
Like, who cares? Like, great, you know your dosha, 2 thumbs up. But if you don't apply the teachings of what it means to understand your doshas, then it's not going to serve you. And we'll pivot back. It's the same with human needs. Understanding your human needs and understanding that you have a need for growth, contribution, certainty, love, significance.
Uncertainty.
Thank you. That, great. If you know them, it's good. It's good knowledge. But if you don't apply the knowledge to how you live your life, it doesn't do anything for you.
Yeah.
It's like reading a book and not applying it. Like, I love people that are like, I read 20 self-help books in the last 6 months. I'm like, okay, what did you learn? What do you mean, what did I learn? What habits have you developed from it? And they're like, oh, nothing. Then I'm like, then why'd you read them in the first place?
Well, I just got a devil's advocate that one, because I totally agree about applied knowledge. Like, unless it's applied knowledge, it's not knowledge. But there's lots of things, like with the number of people that actually read, like, yay, they read 20 books. That's totally amazing, because the typical, high school graduate who doesn't go on to college never reads another book again?
No, now it's college. The average person after college reads 1 book in a lifetime after college. Oh
my gosh, that's so crazy. So, and the average CEO of, and I don't know if it's Fortune 100 or Fortune 500 company, but like the average CEO reads 55 books a year. So they're reading 1 a week. So we get that contrast, right? And I'm definitely in the 1 a week category, and I can't apply all of it, but now I'm aiming for, I have this whole thing about the B-. I'm like really going for a B-, right? So it's like integrate when I can, quickly assimilate, try it out, test it. And then what I'm finding is there's so much overlap, right? So if we look at like in the sea of even though a lot of people are writing and the self-publication industry and the publication industry is going through the roof, right? Where there's just more being published every nanosecond. There's also themes that are circulating that we can see them over here and over here and over here and over here. So there's some part of like being able to mass assimilate and apply that, to me, is another one of these like growing skill sets. And it's definitely driven probably by people like me who are really high in the growth need.
Well, no, I mean, I think we're going through an interesting period in history. I think as a society, we don't realize that the last 20 years has not been the norm for the last 5,000 years.
Right.
That this is the first time in human history that most of the world has pretty much a roof over their head and food on the table and some sort of job support or job. And so your human needs are met for like survival, certainty. You have grown as a person, and you get to this point of, now what do I do? And you are trying to find happiness, and all this information is being thrown at you in different ways. And I call it the weapons of mass distraction. That TV and billboards and magazines and movies keep telling you that you are not living up to what people say you should be. You're not enough in life. And unless you go out and buy this car or have this bigger house or go on this exotic vacation, and if you don't do these things, then you're not special. And people then do these things, and they go out and buy the car that they can't afford, and they get the house they can't afford, and they go on the exotic vacation that they go in debt, and then they come home and go, I'm still not happy. Why? And that's where the self-improvement starts to kick in. And the beginning is to recognize that what you see and what you hear is what you become. So I am in favor of people reading 20 self-improvement books because that's going to feed your brain in a different thought pattern. And then when you start to fill your brain in a different way of thinking, not on the weapons of mass distraction based on pop culture and pop TV, but rather to understand who you are as a person and what it means to be a good person and how to live your life spiritually minded and healthy and as a human being, and to transition away from just trying to find happiness through consumption to finding happiness through developing meaningful relationships and being a kind person, then the journey begins. And the books are there to bring you down that path. Because we have to understand that through that process, you only retain what, 10% of any given conversation or book. So if you read a 300-page book, maybe 1 page of knowledge will be ingrained into your brain, and it's going to be gone in 3 years unless you fully integrate it. So you have to read as much material as possible, but you have to also implement it.
Yeah.
That gets to the end
Definitely.
of what I was getting at in that long-winded explanation.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think that's why the self-improvement space is blown up so much, is because it's the first time in human history where a lot of people are no longer in survival mode. That we have the time.
Oh, yeah. We can explore who we are. Absolutely. I totally agree. Like, there's just this sense of like, oh, wow, who am I? And I mean, you work a lot more with mainstream than I do, for sure. Like, I definitely work with people who've already broken out of a lot of boxes, right? And they're creating their own lives and their own life paths. And they start to see like, wow, like, who else is doing this and what else have they learned? And I think that's where the self-help, just like the proliferation of like, hey, now all these people are testing their, they've created their own experiment lab in their own physiology, in their own tribe, in their own community. A lot of them have, cool equipment and a lot of resources to apply, whether it's through people testing things or whether it's through actually using like lab equipment. But it's like, wow, we've sort of broken out of the mold of needing a Fortune 100 company to fund a project to see what works or not, or to fund a science experiment, or fund a pharmacology funding a certain drug to see, hey, and now we're starting to say like, hey, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? Oh, I'm going to write this book on it because so many people keep asking me what I'm doing, And
now I don't have to take the drug. I could go out and get some herbs that are healthy and natural, that are cheaper, and eat some healthier food. And I no longer need that pharmaceutical supplement.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can get away from that plug-in mindset.
Yeah. Cool.
That's like, it's exciting to be a part of that and to watch this happening.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
It's the flip side of the anger that's going on at the same time.
Yeah. There's still plenty of that going on. Yeah.
So you get the human need right there, like the human need for understanding the self, which would be growth on a positive way. It's to go into the self-help. It's to look at yourself. It's to explore spirituality or mindful living or, self-improvement or business development, how to be. And on the negative side, it's to find consumer consumption, to find that growth through stuff. And then you're still not happy. And then when you go down the negative route, you start pointing to other people and saying, it's their fault that I'm not happy.
Right. It's their fault that I've been sold this drug.
Yeah.
It's their fault that I have this job and have to have insurance or think I do.
It's their fault I'm in debt. It's their fault I have no money.
Yeah, the blame. Yeah, I mean, to me, I use a lot of lingo just because of having a tribe, and I say something, they say it back, and then I say it back, and they say it back, and lingo's evolved. But this, it's like moving from consumer to collaborator is what we say. It's like you have a shift, and then you apply that shift in every aspect of your life. Like, and when you are you notice like, oh, I'm in a consumer pattern here. Like, asking the question, like, what is the collaborator pattern? Which you brought up the connection, how you go from consumption to connection with relationship. So we can do that, whether it's relationship with the plants growing outside our door as weeds that are trying to heal our livers, or whether we do it in a way that is like actually in ways we don't even know that we're still in consumer mentality because we've been raised on it and we're swimming in that water, and it's being perpetuated by the larger corporations who are running the world.
Well, I think I personally think we're at a stage of a civil war. And it's a civil war it's a civil war of ideas. It's not a civil war of guns. It's the civil war of ideas, and one side is I accept people from different paths of life, whether they believe in what I believe in or don't believe in what I believe in, that we should all live peaceful and harmonious, that my beliefs don't conflict with your beliefs, whether we get along or not.
Yeah.
And the purpose of life is to explore how I can be a better person. And that's one side of the war. And the other side of the war is the purpose of life is to consume, to control, to dominate.
Yeah, right.
And I think there's a cultural civil war that's going on around the world that spills into smaller regions. And I think that's what we're experiencing right now. My faith
Well, and I would just say on the first part, I don't see it as like to be a better person. It's like to see what we can do together. To me, is so much more of what's actually happening, of like being like, hey, what can we do together here? And in that, we all become better people. We all become much more integrated.
And I my faith as a human and a person and a person that believes in something more than myself. I have faith that the side of growth and acceptance and understanding and compassion will eventually win out versus the side that wants to dominate and to control the us versus them mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe that that's the kind of the cultural clash that I see.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, absolutely. The old economy, the new economy, absolutely.
Right. Old economy, new economy, old thinking, new thinking.
Yeah.
And it's difficult, and that's where people are struggling because the world's changing faster than most people are ready for.
Yeah. Well, it always has.
Yeah. More,
right.
Yeah. I try not to be a
But that's the name of the game. So if you don't know how to fulfill your need for uncertainty there, find a friend that's like really I'm super comfortable with uncertainty, and there's a lot of people like me out there. So come hang out with us because we can hang out in a relaxed nervous system in the space of uncertainty, and it's super rad. We can even do it without drugs. Okay, Mukunda, it's been a blast, and just best to you and the work you're doing out there to turn the tides.
Yeah, man.
Have a question for Kate? Be a podcast collaborator. Ask Kate a question. If she doesn't have a good answer, she'll find an expert. Topics range from Ayurveda, yoga, sleep, energy, disease, parenting, aging, dying, thriving, suffering, wildcrafting, gardening, making money, making better money, and living on Dharma. Wellness questions are answered on The Monday Show. Dharma and Dollars questions are answered on Thursdays.
Okay, you're going to hear me click as I go into my Facebook Messenger. Yeah, this is a new way that people are asking me questions on the podcast. I actually recommend a better way to ask me questions on the podcast is to go to yogihealer.com/ask, ask. And then you can do a little audio recording and I can play that. And I think that's super cool. Anyways, this is from Sunny Hermelin. I'm not sure how to say your name, Sunny, but I know how to say Sunny. So you're saying, hey, happy to be listening to your podcast. Hey, thank you, Sunny. I'm happy to have a listener. And the question you have is, I do a little basic yoga at home, but I'm stiff like a refrigerator. I do some 15 minutes of yoga every day and would like to be a yoga instructor. How to be that if you're not especially good at yoga is my problem. I'm a pretty athletic person and I like to do a lot of different outdoor activities, but I am stiff. Okay, so yeah, Sunny, I hear you. I mean, just genetics have a lot to do with our stiffness. I know for me, I have two incredibly stiff parents. Lockdown mode, like lack of range of mobility. In my matriarchy line, there's a lot of stenosis, which is like complete lack of lubrication through the spine. So I hear you, and I have to earn my flexibility every single day. So congratulations to you on doing your 15 minutes of yoga. I imagine that'll have a massive impact on your life and a massive impact on your mobility as you go decade by decade through this journey of life. So yay. As far as like stiffness being a blocker to being a yoga instructor, not at all. Like, do not disqualify yourself. I mean, I so relate. When I first started, When I first started yoga teacher training at the Iyengar Yoga Institute in San Francisco in the late 90s, I was the stiffest person in the room. And it wasn't that I had been doing yoga less than other people or been trying less hard or not trying hard enough or whatnot. It was just that, I had AMA, and that makes us stiff. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But it's also just because like my genetic packaging was not that light and flexible and fluid. I married a guy who's incredibly watery, and he has a lot of like genetic fluidity, which is cool. He can start doing yoga. He can go from like stiff to not stiff in like 2 minutes. And it's amazing to see that. My daughter's a little bit less stiff than me, and I'm glad I did a lot of yoga. I hope it influenced her genetic field in pregnancy. Anyways, back to what you actually can do given who you are and what you've got. So a few things that make a huge difference. One, obviously hydration. All right. If you're dehydrated, you're going to be stiffer. So paying a lot of attention or investing a lot of your attention and staying hydrated. I find I drink quite a bit more water than most people, that my body needs a lot more water than most people. So that's just something I've personally figured out that helps a lot. Having a lot of fluidity in my foods also helps. And also just not eating at like late at night. For anyone who's read Body Thrive, the very first habit we dive into, because in my book, it is the number one habit, is an earlier, lighter dinner. Just giving your body a digestive break. So you eat early enough, light enough that you're able to digest your food before you go to sleep. The next morning, you should feel significantly more open. And if you eat a heavier, later dinner, you might wake up the next morning and feel significantly more stiff and groggy and tight. So those are just a few tips. There's obviously a lot more tips in Body Thrive, the book, which you can get on Amazon, or you can go to bodythrive.com and get it there. But my sense is, just keep doing your yoga. Do it first thing in the morning. Use a foam roller. Stay hydrated. Eat an earlier, lighter dinner so that you're digesting your food. All those are really going to make a difference over time. And then, at some point, like, you probably need to do more than 15 minutes a day, to really progress. And getting in a yoga teacher training program or in a precursor to a program like that, you'll be doing a lot more than 15 minutes of yoga, and that will start to help a lot as well. I can get away with a lot now because I've done so much yoga in the past, and it builds up. So later in life, having a shorter practice after you've done a significant amount of yoga, like that's definitely possible as well. Okay, one last tip on stiffness, stiff bodies out there, perk your ears, is oil massage. And this is habit number 6 in Body Thrive. Lubing your physiology with oil really starts to open things up. I mean, first of all, you're oiling your skin, which is helpful, but you're lubricating your physiology. You're lubricating your lymphatic system. You're increasing your circulation. You're massaging your muscles, and in it, I'll actually like pull muscles away from bone, and that has this added benefit of really starting to open up the fascia, and it's the fascia that keeps us in lockdown. Right? Lockdown. No fun. So give yourself a massage. I like to do mine. I like to take a shower at night and do it before I go to sleep, especially in the summer. I find that really just a lovely way to wind down a long day. But just see, any of the things I just listed, just write them all down, make a little checklist, see if you can do a few of them a day. Notice what happens. All right. Thanks for the cue, Sonny. There's my A. I'm so glad you tuned in for another episode of the Yoga Healer Dharma and Dollar Show. And up on Monday on the Yoga Healer Real Life Show, we have Dr. John Douillard. He and I wrap on summer, on air conditioning, on the ketogenic diet, and what season that's good for, and lots more. If you have summer issues, you really want to tune in, like issues like migraine, skin rashes. If you have weight gain in summer, you're also going to want to tune in to that show. Any kind of like inflammation, insomnia. If you burn out, tune in. All right. Thanks for listening. And if you really, really like me, just do me a little favor and go to iTunes and rate this podcast, rate the Yoga Healer podcast. Give me some feedback. I'll read your feedback on the air. Namaste.
Yoga Healer Real Life Show with Kate Stillman. Yoga Healer.